So Richard, are all three of you like
You are. So that's what you can understand. Actually, council started at 6:30, went into a closed session, and I will let CAO describe what we did.
Okay, so the meeting went into closed under the provision in the Municipal Act, where a meeting of council or local board or committee may be closed to the public for the purpose of education or training the members, and no member discusses or otherwise deals with any matter that materially advances the business or decision making of council. So we held a training session this evening to get trained on our new iPads and the new meeting management software. So that was the purpose of the closed session tonight.
So okay. Okay. On the department schedule, Donna, do you want to lead off?
Sure, thanks very much. So we're at that time of year where we will be spending a lot of time together. So I welcome everyone here to our first budget meeting tonight. And I just wanted to point out the time frame for tonight is from 7:30, as you had your starting meeting first from 6:30 till 7:30 tonight. So we're going from 7:30 till 9 this evening. And then our next two meetings, which have been scheduled, so Wednesday of this week and then the following Wednesday, the 17th, both those meetings will run from 7 till 9. Now, if we're, very close to finishing the agenda that night, we may run over a few minutes, but we're going to try to work through as quickly as we can the first three information meetings and to be able to keep us on track with our agendas. So also tonight then, tonight we're going to be hearing from the Director of Public Works and all the departments that are affected by him. And then also we're going to have the Director of Corporate Services and her departments. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a bit of a background on the budget process. And as you know, there's about 4 parts to the budget process. So we have our planning and budgeting, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. And that doesn't really change from year to year. So the planning stage is our extremely difficult stage. It's complex and it's lengthy and involves a lot of meetings. And in order to proceed with this stage, we review priorities from council, we look at grants and projects, and of course it becomes more and more difficult each year, and this year is certainly no exception to that. It's definitely a teamwork exercise, and the department heads start gathering their information in the fall. So our first draft of the budget was probably put together by the end of December, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So this particular budget is our starting point. We've already had various cuts, and of course various cuts are going to be required as we move through the process. And also we look at many factors as we incorporate into the budget: increased costs, inflation, priorities, decreased funding, end targets, and previous year-to-dates. So into the implementation phase, which we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it translates the budget numbers into action. And the budget is an estimate, and throughout the year we still strive to get the best price for any tendering and any cost comparisons that we can do throughout the year. Monitoring is ongoing. That doesn't stop, of course, with the passing of the budget. Myself, I'm continually looking at the budget all year long, as are the department heads. They're continually monitoring their budgets. And then, of course, we bring quarterly reports to council. The evaluation phase is where we evaluate current operations and procedures and make any changes and file any annual reports. We try to have a wrap up and do something different. Last year, at the end of the budget process, we had a bit of a brainstorming session, and out of that came some of our department reviews, which you're going to hear about as you work through the budget process. So, also, this budget, of course, is, as I said, it's so difficult each year. And this budget in no way really reflects what all the things that we want to do and wish we could do, but you have to get started somewhere. So just to have a few notes on the budget schedule. So as I was saying, the department heads work on compiling this data. So all last fall and up until the end of December. So the first draft was sent to the SMT on January 4th. Sharon and I met January 7th, and we began initial discussions with the SMT. And from that came a list of budget cuts that are already off of this first version that you are seeing now. So historically, and as always, you know, many years we've started at 30, 40%, whatever. And I mean, that's just the way it works out. And then we pare down to something that we could work with. And then from there, we continue to pare down until we get the budget into a passable format. Our cutoff date was January the 28th. So we just paid those bills February 1st at the council meeting last week. And we have tonight's meeting, February the 10th, which is Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday, the 17th. So I'm just going to flip ahead for a second. I told you who was on the agenda for tonight, and then for the Wednesday night meeting, Pat and her department are going to be taking the whole time of the meeting since her department is so large. And then the February the 17th meeting will be all the rest of the departments, and hopefully we can get through all of those as well. The year-to-date numbers in your budgets, I'm not sure if you're looking at your eScribe versions. So I had posted last week the first budget to eScribe, which worked out really well with Richard. So then today I posted the updated version, which the budget itself is the same, but from last Monday, all the year-end entries that we have at this time have now been posted into the version that you have tonight. So it's in the paper copy and it's in the eScribe version that you all should be working with. So we all should be working with the exact same numbers as well. And so therefore, I just wanted to point out, though, it's going to take us these first 3 meetings to get through that budget. So we're not looking for any changes as we work through these ones, but you can certainly make your notes and we certainly want to get all your questions answered and that type of thing. So as I said, the year-to-date numbers that we've plumped in there, we're about 90% there. We still have to do a few more adjustments before the audit starts, but we have a really good base there so that you can see across where we ended up for 2015. And again, I know that's not going to help you too much tonight, but it will give you, for the next 2 meetings at least, you'll be able to look back on this, and you'll be able to, if there's anything that comes out of that, you can certainly, we'll be discussing it as we move along. So as I was saying, the first 2 meetings and the first part of the 3rd meeting are for information purposes only, and I'm not really expecting any changes. We're looking for your comment and feedback, but at the February 17th meeting, if there is time available, which there may or may not be, staff will be looking for direction at that point on how to manage this budget and transform it into an acceptable position. And we will be setting up a new meeting schedule at that time. So we're aware of, as I said, when we were putting this budget together at the end of December, we're already aware of numerous changes that are going to be taking place before you get your next version of the budget. And as I said, just because council's only seeing this last week for the first time, staff have worked on a number of versions. This is certainly not our first version, even though it's the first version that you're working with. Okay, so some ongoing challenges, and you're certainly all aware of these, but I just wanted to highlight them quickly before we dive into some of the discussions over the next 3 budget nights. So you're all aware that of the reduction in OMPF funding. Ours was $53,100. The increased OPP costs for Blythe and East Wawanosh are up $45,482. We've talked about some significant utility costs, increased wage and benefits cost, shifting of tax burdens, the declining industrial and commercial values, and the increased farmland values, which specifically affect the East Wawanosh ward. One of our highest priorities is our infrastructure deficit and asset management, and we'll be talking about that all year long for sure, and maintaining our existing programs and services. So I just wanted to let you know, in the first rounds, as I said, we certainly started out a lot higher than the 12% that we're at right now. So these are some cuts and changes that the senior management team already has made to reduce this budget down to about the 12%. So because these amounts have been cut out of this version of the budget, doesn't mean that they've completely gone by the wayside. So each of the department heads that are affected by these amounts will explain to you whether they're putting that project on hold or how they're going to continue with that project, or indeed it may be that they have decided to cancel the project altogether. So these cuts that the department heads have already made is $737,136. So one of the projects that Kelly will be talking to you, he had intended his first round of budgets had the replacement of the LED street lights at a cost of about $224,000. So that's out of the budget for now, but Kelly will talk to you about what his plans are for that. He also had a front end loader in there for about $150,000. In trying to plan for our future and asset management, Kelly had a $100,000 transfer to reserve, so that's been reduced back by $25,000. When we come to Pat's presentations next week, she has made a number of changes to her budgets, and she has decreased the aquatic center projects by the $57,000, the town hall HVAC by $20,000. The Memorial Hall project, which is in conjunction with 1419, she has reduced like $233,000 out of there. She will talk to you about some flooring projects that have been ongoing at the daycare, and so this one has been put on hold for $6,500. In the first draft of the budget, one of our first drafts, not yours, we had pulled $25,000 out of reserves to offset the roof down at the daycare. And there was about an $8,400 operating change that Kathy will speak to when she gets to her section on reserves as well. And the museum flooring project of $3,600 was pulled for this first round. So we will be having some discussion on these projects, but for now, those projects are all already out of what before you got this amount here tonight. So some of the highlights in the budget, and as I said, it's too early to concentrate on things like tax rates and some of those things. We're way too early on in the process to spend the time on that. So as I said, we're working through the budget to see what's in here. And obviously then we're going to have discussions on what else has to come out and what we will still be able to manage this year. So we had applicable wage adjustments of 1.49%. Patrick Street project, Kelly and I were really disappointed. Late Friday, we just found out that we're not going to get that OCIF funding for Patrick Street. So we haven't had a chance to strategize. We had a few toss out of ideas of how we might be able to still go ahead with Patrick Street. But anyway, we're definitely disappointed about that. We've talked about the decreases in OMPF and the increases in OPP. We have incorporated in the increased revenue in our rates and fee bylaws. And one of the items, a grant that we do get each year for $92,375, we have planned to apply that to Arthur Street for our second version, but we may end up flipping that to Patrick Street or part of it, or whatever we can do to make both of those projects work. So, and also we have phase 2 of our asset management plan, which is exciting. It's council had given pre-budget approval to proceed with that. Also, we have our roads needs study we're planning in Kelly's department for that to go ahead, and that was $19,500. We have phase 2, which is our big Westmoreland Mill Street project in Blythe, and Kelly will talk to you about that. Of course, we have to pay our debts, so our debt principal and interest payments this year comes up to $249,798. A couple of big donation requests are still in the budget at this point for council to have discussion on February the 17th. And that is the $100,000 request that you received from the hospital and the $40,000 request that you received from Maitland River. So on the 17th, you'll have your list of all the donation requests that you have. And so at that time, I'm looking for some hard-tailed discussions on what stays in and what you can afford and those types of things. Of course, we're continuing with the next part of the new well in Blythe. It's critical that that construction portion stay on schedule, and we are definitely hoping for that, the tenders to be awarded by March 31st. So we will talk about that a little bit in the water and sewer section tonight, but it's a very critical project for sure. Water and sewer, for right at this moment, the operating part is status quo with a number of changes that we've been talking about. You've instructed your CAO to look into the possibility of a contract, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on operating this evening, even though it is on the agenda. And the fire chief had come to you for pre-budget approval for a new tanker, which was coming out of reserves. So continuing on, a small change in format. We've actually created a new page this year to deal with our fire prevention officer and any expenses relating to the fire department that only apply to North Huron. And so we're separating out the expenses not shared by our partners. Seems to be somewhat confusing. For us, we look at it as our whole department, and we know which pieces are not shared and shared. But when others are looking at our budget, I think it's more difficult for them to understand, you know, are we paying a share of the loans and such? So I thought it was just easier just to take the whole thing out and create a whole different section. We can call it something else, but that's really what that is. When the fire chief is here, he will talk to you about the EST. You know, there's been some meetings recently about that, and perhaps by the time on the 17th that he is presenting, there might be something new to report on that, hopefully. And we talked about briefly that the daycare roof estimated at $120,000, offset by $25,000 from reserves, is in the budget. Just on Monday night, then I received the physician recruitment budget. So the figure that I had in was last year's figure, so that's a couple $1,000 less, actually, $3,000 less. And Maitland Valley, I didn't have the numbers, and I still haven't got anything formally other than what you gave me, but there's again another $2,000 or $3,000 that's lower on that one as well. So, and Kelly will talk to you about columbariums for both the Bingham and Blythe cemeteries. So just in summary, before we get started into the meat of the budget, we're still looking at a hefty budget, over 14 million, almost 14 and a half in expenditures. Our first draft has an increase in spending dollars of about $481,000. And so that would result in an increase of 12.83, but of course, you know, that's not where we're going to stay. 1% increase generates approximately $45,000. And again, some of the next budget meetings, I want to dedicate some time to capital spending dollars and gas tax spending. So it's critical that we address some of those issues as well to make sure that we're keeping on top of those. And again, council has a lot of work to do with staff here to sort out our priorities. You've had a number of outside requests this year, and we have a number of projects, et cetera, for our own infrastructure needs that have to be addressed. So we're definitely in for a mini meeting budget, as we usually are, to get the budget into our formula to be passed. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to Kathy, our Director of Corporate Services, and she is going to start the meeting off with her department. So we shall start there.
I'm sure everybody knows Val, who's our manager of childcare services, and Val is going to present her 5 budgets.
They're saving for me.
Before I get Val just to go over her budgets and review the notes that she did hand out to you. On page 27 of your budget, which is the daycare budget, in the 2016 budget, the first line under reserves of the 47,846. So I was just going to explain to you what that is comprised of. $25,000 of that is reserves that was set up last year out of the surplus from the daycare operating budgets, the programs, not the facilities themselves, but from the surplus from operating the program. So typically in other years, any revenue or surplus, from the childcare programs has went into the general budget, whatever surplus or deficit we had for that year. So last year we put $25,000 because daycare did have a surplus last year, and we did put $25,000 into that for a reserve to help with the cost of the repairs to the daycare roof. Typically every year we have $31,250 that we out of reserves to help offset the cost of the any deficit that we may have for operating the childcare programs, and we bring that in and out of reserves every year. You'll see that we did that in 2015. So this year what we did is when that goes back into reserves, we're only going to bring 22,846 of that back out, which will help us just maintain our childcare programs, and we don't need it all. If we do need more, we'll get a motion from council to bring that back out and offset any deficit we may have. But we would like on the going forward for council to consider each year that any surplus that is in the child care programs at the end of each year that we do put in to reserve for the daycare roof, that we would like to continue to build up that reserve, and that will help the capital costs and in the facility department. They are also budgeting, and it's going to help us build up that surplus so that we can get that roof fixed. So other than, if I'm going to let Val go over her notes, and she's just going to explain to you how the budget numbers for each of her programs were derived at this year.
So I'll just highlight what's on the sheet that you were all provided. And I would like to start off by saying it's always just for me a calculated guess, and to be honest, because you can't predict how many children are going to enroll in your center. You can't know what age groups they're all going to fill. But after the patterns over several years I'm making my best guess at it. So this is how we're moving forward. So parent revenue, I calculated this year using 10 full infant spaces, 20 full toddler spaces, and 25 preschool spaces. That is calculating with full infant, full toddler, and 2/3 full with our preschool spaces. I do that because we don't consistently go over the 24, 25 in the preschool till later in the year, and there's a small window when we are between the 25 and 32. So I tried to take an average that would go over the full year instead of just trying to guess a high or low number. You will see that in our revenues, there is fee subsidy from the county. That is really revenue generated by children attending our center. So how I calculate that is by the number of children that I see using the center. And I took 3/4 of what I see using the center as usually at this time paying full fees. And we considered that the 1/4 would be a subsidized portion, and that comes from the county. But altogether, subsidized fee subsidy from the county and revenue from the parents is all on your number of spaces used in the programs. You'll also see that we receive direct operating grants, and they are based on your license capacity. So it's good that we continue to try to expand our license capacities whenever possible, because that is how we get the direct operating grant calculation. The numbers of children using the service does fluctuate frequently throughout the year, so these are average numbers. We did have 2 staff retire, and we are going with lower preschool numbers. So you'll see that our staffing costs that I predicted for next year are slightly lower. And that's also from Donna's coaching, because she always says, come on, Val, you can do better than that. So we're trying very hard to reduce our staffing costs. The thing you need to keep in mind at daycare is we're always legislated by the number of staff we're required to have on the floor. And that's not something you can just choose to do whether you feel like it or you don't. It's legislated. So we do our very best job to do that most cost effectively. I also calculate our costs for staff wages specific to each staff in our program. So it's not just done in a ballpark figuring. I take each staff in each room, figure out how many hours they work each year, figure out how many days they are entitled to for vacation and how many days they are allowed for sick days, because our program is also unique in that we have to provide coverage every time a staff is absent from our building in order to maintain our ratios. So those costs do cost our program a little bit more than some others, because you're not always necessarily replacing staff when they're on vacation. At the daycare, it's always required. I did also put a small increase in office costs this year, as because we had a retirement, and I think we haven't had the presentation yet, but I did put that onto my office costs. And I think if you look across the board, we rarely go up. We've tried to maintain our costs straight across the board for a long time. And in fact, I've cut things on several occasions if we've consistently not used them. So we're pretty bare bones down there. The one thing I did increase this year, and only again slightly, was food costs. What I've been hearing on the news that the economists are predicting food costs are going to rise significantly this year. And we haven't raised the cost of our food costs for a while, so I did increase that slightly. So that is our main center. So that's how I came up with those costs. The next one I have on my list is early learning. I'm not sure what page that is for you guys. Page 26, is that right? Next page over. Early learning, this is our off-site childcare, and I have calculated parent revenue based on a study group of 8. I like to highlight that this off-site group allows the room in the preschool in the main center. So we have room for the 32 spaces then in the main center. It allows us to bump our toddlers out as they have their birthdays, and it allows us to have new enrollers. So this off-site is pretty important to us as well. It also allows our summer JK-SK children who are still eligible to attend childcare to use room in our programs, because we have that space and those license capacity numbers up at Sacred Heart. The next one is before and after at Maitland River. This is your busiest program that you operate in the township right now. It averages approximately 60 children after school every single day. How the actual calculations, I broke them down differently because there's a different rate for JKSK because there are different ratios, and then there's grade 1 and up. So we calculate it with 13 JKSK in the mornings because our morning numbers are much lower than our afternoon. Mornings don't seem to be as important to the families as the after school piece. So 13 JKSK in the mornings and 13 grade 1 and up in the afternoon, and 13, I think that's wrong. That should be 26 in the afternoon. Oh no, 13 grade 1 and up, and that should be in the morning, so that's correct. So 13 in the morning of the younger and 13 of the older. And then for the afternoon, we bump up from 26 to 26 JKSK and 30 grade 1 and up. And that can go up. We have a larger license capacity, but again, I took a middle average of what we seem to be using right now. It could go down or up depending on, again, the needs of families. Our before and after school program then at Sacred Heart is a much smaller before and after school program. The school itself is smaller. We typically have approximately 5 to 8 children in the AM, so I calculate it with 8 because we hope that it grows every year. Our kindergarten kids graduate, we get a few more in it, and 12 in the afternoon. It's a pretty small one, but it seems to pay its bills, so that's good. Early years. So the early years program is our program, which is a parent education program. It's a parent service program where parents stay and play at a variety of services throughout the communities. This is a contract service we offer on behalf of the County of Huron. They provide to us the funds to offer, so that the early years budget is always 100% funded from the County of Huron. And for the first time ever, it was increased by 2%. So since the beginning of offering the early years for the Township of North Huron, we got a small increase. And just to note that the early years programs, because I manage them and we provide the staff and I oversee them and we do a lot of work for them, they do have a component in your main daycare budget where they pay us a fee for administering it. So, and then I just also wanted to highlight on all of our budgets, there is wage improvement dollars. And it was my understanding that we'll go through the application process as we did last year. But again, those should be 100% funded dollars. So they should, the understanding is that they put forward that promotion that year one, they would raise the early childhood educator fees by $1. The next year they would raise it by $2. And those dollars are funded by the government. So what you see on there is 100% funded for those dollars for that wage increase. And we do have a letter or memorandum of understanding with the staff that should that funding ever be disallowed or discontinued, then their wages would revert to the original pay grade of the Township of North Huron. And they've all signed on and agreed with that.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about Val's budgets?
The county subsidy that comes in for each of the different groups, is that based on the number of kids that are there? Because it's down, some of them it's down from last year.
It's down because I went from a 2/3 or 1/3 ratio to a 3/4. What the subsidized ratio is, parents who qualify financially, so they have to present financial criteria to the County of Huron to qualify for it, receive either all or a portion of their fees covered. So it's a hard one to predict too, because it depends on the families using your service. So one year I did like half and half, and then it was like way the other way. So this year, how I'm calculating it is that 1/4 of our families will likely qualify for some financial assistance, and that's how I calculate it. And that's where we get paid through the county for those parents' children to attend.
Just one more, I'd like to thank you, Val, for the job you've done in the budget. I can remember when it didn't look like this.
Thank you.
Okay, and I thank you for the job you have done. You're doing a great job.
All right.
I
Girls
just,
work hard to do it. It's not me, they do it hard.
I just might note that our before and after school program at Maitland campus, like Val was saying, is our little money maker program. You can see that it makes us money. But at the main center, our toddlers and our babies, because of our ratio and the amount of staffing we need to pull off those two programs, they're not our money makers, but they're feeding our other programs because those children stay with us all through the time that our babes come into our program right up through. And because, 60 children in the before and after school program is a lot of children, but the revenue helps offset those other programs that are not our money makers. But when we get those kids in there right at the very beginning when they're children, they come up through the programs, and it takes about a lot to keep that program staffed, but, 60 children, it's really a very, it's an asset to her programs. And the same with the early years, even though it doesn't cost us any money, it still helps us with the rest of our programs because we have the children in the center and in our programs.
So Val, with the 2 staff that are retired, do you have any plans to fill those positions? How are you going to keep that ratio of numbers going?
We advertised in the papers and we did end up filling them internally. So there were 2 staff. Presently we're allocated, I think it's 6 full-time staff. And so when 2 out of those 6 retired, we have about 10 staff working regular hours, or 15 actually. So 2 of the girls who'd been working regular hours were then awarded those positions. We held interviews and selected the top candidates. So they're filled, and we have actually done a little bit of advertising for supply people and had some good response lately for that as well too. So fingers crossed, we're looking pretty good for staffing right now.
And just one final note, if there's no questions. So September 1st of every year, we do implement a 50-cent increase to childcare fees across the board. We bring that to council before that date for your approval, and we again will in September of 2016 implement that 50-cent increase. For you, Lynn. Sorry, Trevor.
I'm done in June.
I'm not.
So,
The only concern I would have, based on what I'm seeing, is the full-time salaries in the normal program. And then the reason I say that is because we say we're retired to, and obviously with lower staffing, but that's an $80,000 adjustment compared to what we had this year. That's not down slightly in my.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Like,
Well, so the top end salaries are paid out to your highest, like the longest term employees too. So they will be filled with,
lower
with
staff,
the lowest
lower
growth.
costed people.
So the lower costing people, but also in other years I've staffed for 32 in the center,
Right.
as well as the lunch breaks that go to cover those programs.
Okay.
So going with 25 or 24 means 3 staff instead of 4 staff, which is at least 37,000 right off the top, not counting the higher wages of the 2 staff that retired. So it was, it was pretty,
Okay.
and plus, if you look back, and this is another reason Donna says, and I have Donna in my brain, if you look back, I didn't often go over on she always thought it was a little bit exaggerated on my staffing, because I'm telling you, it's detailed, figured out. And she said, come on, you never spend it, try and cut it back. So I did. And then you are all witnesses to the fact if I go over this year, I said to her, but if I go over, you have to tell them why. But I do think it's manageable, unless what happens is if I do end up going up in staffing costs, then you will see the parent revenue go up. So they usually should offset one another. And so she's tried to reassure me that that's how it will go. I think it will.
Your comments were that helped me understand a little closer on what on how those numbers relate. So thank you.
So on a weekly basis, we have anywhere from 20 to 26 staff working in the childcare programs at one time. Only 6 of those staff are full-time. The rest are all supply staff. A lot of them are call-in as needed basis. So Val keeps a very extensive supply list if possible, and we do use a lot of supply staff, keeping in mind, like Val said, we have to keep ratio that we are ratio.
But we have very steady girls who are willing to work without full-time too, who fill lots of hours, because that also works for their lifestyle and their home lives too.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions about?
God bless them.
Just gonna say we've been using it for 6 years, and it's the best thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Val.
Thank you guys. Good luck with everything.
Anna forgot my keys, and she sends me down with these to get in.
Okay, so we're going to carry on then with Kelly's budget. So we'll start first off with Kelly's roads budget, which I have up here for you. And we'll start with the expense side first.
Well, actually, I wasn't gonna start with that. I was
Okay,
gonna
you-
start with my report to
All right, you
council
do
with
that.
my recommendation and my executive summary. You should have it on there. I just wanted to go over the capital budget overview first. Donna has touched a little bit on that. So, the Mill Street, Westmoreland Street Phase 2 is what we're calling it. We're looking at 417,000 to do that. We've got the Arthur Street Engineering for 95,000. The Patrick Street reconstruction, Donna touched on that as well, and we'll be taking that out because we didn't receive any funding. So we're gonna try to rejig that, but to see if we can still keep that in. I've got some fuel tanks out at East Wallenosh that I wanna take out. We're not using them anymore, and they need to come out of the ground, so that's about $15,000 worth of work because we have to get in consultants and professionals to do that. We just can't do that on our own. So then we've also got a roads needs study for 20,000, which is something that hasn't been updated since 2008. So that's gonna help us moving forward. I think council has given direction for that as well. Fleet replacement, that's in our replacement of 2 half-ton vehicles, which possibly could be changing. So I just wanted to put it in there to let you know that that's what we were looking at. And the equipment replacement, I kind of spelled it out a little bit further in there, and that's for 24,000. And to replace some sidewalk, both in Blythe and Wing. See, we don't have any out in East Wallenosh. No sidewalk,
Just Auburn.
just Auburn. Yeah. So you're looking at a total capital program of 800, a little over 800,000. If we go to the waste department, I've wanted to replace the compactor out there, and we're gonna put in another 20,000 into reserves for that. This last year, we've actually done quite well with the repairs on the compactor that's out there, and we've decreased the amount of fuel and just changed our practices out there. So that's done. We've done quite well there. Cemeteries, touched on the niche walls. The one here in Wingham is over 60% sold, so it's time to look at having the second one installed. The one in Blythe will be covered completely by the bequest that was left to the. And I put chapel removal renovation. We haven't used the chapel in, well, before I got here, so, in the last 7 years, 6-7 years anyways. So I did have some money allocated for repairs last year, which I rejigged over to, we had to tear down the house and tear down the barn. So we were looking at putting a building up there, and we've got that property ready to move forward. So we used about $6,000 there last year to do that, which kind of wasn't into the chapel, but there was some work that really needed to be done. And I just feel that we need to have a look at the chapel. Are we going to use it? The only part of the chapel we use is the storage in the basement. So do we throw money at it, or do we take it down? In drainage, I don't have any capital. We're just going to finish up the Snell drain, and there's a hopper drain that's in the queue right now, and the Jackson drain repair is moving forward. On the street lights, again, no capital. We pulled it out, but I have LAS, a real term. They're going to come in and do an audit find out exactly what we need here and then give us some options. So I felt that was the best way to go with that, just because of the price of the streetlights. But so now, just moving on to the discussion part of my report. You'll see that my budget has changed by about $77,000 from last year. This is because I'm wanting to put 75,000 transfer into reserves. And then there's a slight increase in inspections and contracts as per the roadside grass cutting. Engineering is going to be up a little bit, and the fleet expense. So that's overall on my roads budget. I've increased it by $77,000, and those are the reasons why it's been increased. The rest of the operating, as you can see, the wages, I've actually gone down with the wages in the last 3 years. So even with the increases that we've had some people retire, and we're going to be like we're holding our wages fairly close there. We've gone with some part-time people to fill in those vacancies instead of hiring full-time. But pretty much everything else is stayed in line. Like I said, I got 75,000 that I want to put into reserves. The roadside grass cutting is up a bit. I'd like to do some more engineering on the roads as well as the roads needs study, so it's up a little bit as well. The loose top maintenance has pretty much stayed the same.
Sorry, Kelly, that's 75,000.
Yeah.
What is the transfer for? So we put $75,000 in. What do you?
Well,
what's
we
the
have
intention?
no reserves for roads, like to do any work. So like.
So this is basically building up our infrastructure so that when a road comes up.
Well, like
Our
here we are with Patrick Street, and
Right.
we didn't get any funding for Patrick Street, so we have no.
So we have nothing to do.
So.
Okay. No, that's fine. No, I just wanted to be clear on what exactly the intention of those, like when we put them into reserve, what's the intention? Is it for road repair, or is it something different, or what? I just want to make sure that we're clear as well.
Well, hopefully, when moving forward with the roads needs study, they're gonna give us, the direction that we're looking for in order to say, okay, this is where we wanna go.
Go ahead.
I may comment too, as we move forward with our asset management strategy, we're going to need to look at all of our major asset categories and look at what our annual reserve transfers should be in order to fund those assets over the long term. So, I think it's going to be very important, particularly in road projects, knowing that some of the approvals for those projects take up to 8 months to get an environmental compliance approval for a roads, water, and wastewater project. So if we look at doing our engineering in 1 year and beginning our approvals, that we're moving forward to be able to implement those projects next year and have adequate reserve available. It's also important to have adequate reserve there in the event that a funding program comes up. We want to make sure that we have our matching contribution there to be able to take advantage of provincial and federal dollars when they come up.
So I've touched on the capital, and I've touched on how that roads budget has increased. We've got, moving to the next one, yes. Sure. No, waste was next, I believe. So in the waste budget, changes to operations, we'll see a contract increase for curbside pickup as well as recycling by 1.5% this year. That was included in the 3-year contract, so we know that that's taking place. operating expense will show an increase to reflect the increased cost to ship shingles by the contractor to Try Recycling, which is actually saving us money in the long run because it's not using up valuable space at the landfill, and it's a cost recovery. So you'll see at the top, the tipping fees will reflect an increase because of the shingles that we shipped out. So we'll get that, but then in turn, we have to pay for them to be recycled and to be hauled to the recycling facility. I've also asked to put in $20,000 to replace the current packer. I believe that's about it in the waste budget.
Sorry. So, I'm not sure this is a question for you, Kelly, or Sharon, or who, but these service reviews that we've touched on about, and obviously waste is one of them. When are they gonna come during this budget review? Like, what is, this is budgeted on status quo, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So, okay.
Great for you. So with the landfill and recycling service review, we did some initial analysis and that was presented at the public meeting. It's the intent to bring forward all of those service review reports for discussion in conjunction with the budget process here. We don't have this one completed. I think there is an opportunity for further public input on service levels. The contract doesn't expire until the end of 2016.
That's great.
So I think our investigation on service levels should continue over the next few months, and you should be getting some reports back to inform that decision-making before the end of the contract expires. So I don't know when you would anticipate going to tender on that, Kelly. You're going out to tender?
Yeah.
So prior to going to tender, I think you will receive that report.
Well, we do have an increase in revenue actually because of the bag tags. We sell about 40,000 bag tags a year. And so from 80,000 to 100,000, there would be about $20,000 in revenue there from the bag tags. But we also have been directed by the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change to do some work out at the landfill, which is going to cost us $24,000. So it's really not going to change the bottom line, and it's something that they've directed us to do, so we have to do that. Now, saying that we sell 40,000 bag tags a year, we may not sell that many this year. Because of the increase, people might want to recycle that much more, which is something that we want them to do. So I guess we'll see how that shakes out at the end of the year. So the next is the street lighting then. And again, there's not much change here for street lighting. The only thing is the percentage in increased hydro. Like Donna touched on, we had put it in to change the street lighting, which we're still looking to change the street lighting. We just are asking LAS Real Term to investigate for us, and they'll put together a proposal, and there'll be 3 segments to that proposal that you can purchase them outright. You can go on a cost share.
Yeah, and in that proposal, does it come with what the rate of return would be based on so obviously the capital dollars is a couple $100,000, but there's a savings that you
and that's why it's taking a longer period of time to get those reports together and brought forward. So LAS will come and actually do a proposal to council.
Yeah, there's been a lot of emails from LAS with regards to energy consumption, energy savings. It's interesting. It would be interesting to know if there still is there rebate programs out there from Hydro One and West Area?
They look into all of that.
They look into that all.
That's all factored in.
Okay.
And, Michelle, the lady I was talking to, said that it's kind of plateaued now for the costing for the new heads and stuff. So, waiting a little bit longer may be beneficial to the municipality. So, I mean, as much as it's cost us in hydro to get us to this point.
Yeah, to me, that's an interesting one because, it's very easy to take out $200,000, but if you've got a savings in utilities of $50,000 or $60,000 a year, it's not $200,000 that you're spending. It's the rate of return that we need to be looking at. It's just hard dollars.
At the AMO conventions, the last 2 years, there's been displays done at night to view it, and general figures as to what it cost and then the length of time. And a lot of it was 3 to 4 years in payback for making the change.
Yeah, you're right. That's what she's telling us.
And the LAS reports will give us that type of information to intelligently make a decision.
Good.
James?
We have put some of these lights in some of our hamlets now.
Yeah, I did all three.
in one.
Yeah.
And we have 3 municipalities in Auburn, and just driving through, you can see the difference
In the 3
in
different
the
lights.
3 different lights.
Yeah.
And very positive feedback from new residents in Auburn.
That's good. It was more to get out of like sending our contractor to our reaches of our municipality, because you were paying more to have a repair done, and there'd usually be one light out, and it would be out for a long time because we usually wait until we be cost effective to send out the second light. Yeah. So that's why we did it. I guess the cemetery budget is the next one, and I'm looking at, as far as revenue goes, it's like daycare sort of thing. You can't really tell how much revenue you're gonna take in a year. So, this one, I've wanted to put some new asphalt down there. So we've asking to put another $10,000 into the reserve until we've got enough that we can actually do some asphalt to our roads out there. So we want to also put up on each wall, the second one. $5,000 was requested to the Wyndham Cemetery, which could be used there, so that would help offset the cost of that. Each wall is estimated at about $28,000 to erect one.
Sorry, Kelly. I'm not really sure on cemetery. I'm not in that business yet. So
Sure.
what is a niche wall? Just explain it to me.
It's cremated remains are interred inside
In a wall.
well,
In
this
the
one is a
chest.
circular,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's just in a crypt.
Okay. Thank you.
So the family purchases it. And,
Okay.
yeah. So we're over 60% sold. Is Kathy still here? Oh, there you are. So we're getting close to, if we don't have them for sale, we're asking for. And again, I put $6,000 in for to determine what we're going to actually do with the chapel. So
Just a comment, Kelly. I think I like the fact that we're putting in money for these investigations on utilization. Like if we haven't used the chapel in 7 years, like I want to understand the public's opinion on this too. So it's there. I think they need to understand what that is. But if it hasn't been used, why are we continuing to maintain it and
well, it's at a point whether we.
or it's gonna fall down or whatever the
Wow,
case may be, or
yeah.
whatever, like, you have to understand what the utilization of it is in order to continue to throw money. And I understand that, so, like, it's, like, I wouldn't wanna do something where the public's not aware of it, but again, at the end of the day, I wanna make sure that the public has had a chance to say, but again, I think they're using that, in my opinion, they've already said they're not using it. So if nobody's using it for 7 years, why are we continuing to throw money on it?
Yeah,
Keeping in mind though, Trevor, that the whole basement of the, is winter storage where we keep all of, our vehicles in the spring. So we do use it.
It's our vault.
It's our vault.
Right, so there's, that's a structure that you can have,
Yeah.
without the whole building. You don't, like,
But we do need something.
sure, I'm not suggesting we don't need something. I'm suggesting that we don't need to fix
Yeah.
something above that nobody's technically using.
So I just wanted council to be aware of that, for sure. Moving forward. So the last one would be the drainage. And like I said earlier, I don't have any capital for drainage. It's cost. The projects come through, it's sent out to the ones that are using the drainage, so we put in for drainage superintendent, we do get a grant for that to help offset the wages and the time that's spent on drainage. Those 3 projects that are pending. So the budget in a nutshell for now. So, any questions or comments?
Yolanda?
When you look at the service review with the waste management contract, can you look at green bins and see if
Green
that's?
bins.
Yeah.
I've looked into it, but yeah, it'll be on the report.
Sure.
I would just like to note that at this time, we haven't included anything for house and dam in there, but we will be having some discussion and coming forward with a recommendation on the preferred engineering solution and a transfer of reserve from reserve to that engineering solution. So I just wanted to let you know that that is coming as a future amendment.
Is there anything further for Kelly? If not, thank you, Kelly.
For you,
Okay, so we're going to flip over then to page 23 and talk briefly about water and sewer. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the operating part of that in light of your discussions that you're having, looking at contracts and certain options. So a couple of things though I do want to bring to your attention there is in the capital section at the bottom, and Sharon, you jump in wherever you've been involved with this as well. So of course, the road project, Patrick Street, was split between water, sewer, and road. So now that we know we're not going to get funding on it later this week, and certainly before we get to our next version of the budget, we'll strategize on how we can go ahead and hopefully still complete Patrick Street. As you know, on a go-forward basis, we do have a number of projects that are going to certainly exceed any money that we're going to have, being the Patrick Street project, the Edward Street project. We had some work we wanted to do on the water tower and some tar and chip programs and on and on. So certainly we have no lack of projects that we can carry on with. And then of course with the Westmoreland Mill Street being our big priority in Goliath for this year. So with the Patrick Street project a bit up in the air, one of the other things down at Blythe was a clarifier. It had to do with, I can't explain it to you that well, but Dawn had put $25,000 in the budget, and it has to do with some weirs and drums and an air diffuser and some of those types of things. So he had, it was part of the distribution system that he wanted left into the budget for consideration. The other thing in the sewer budget is $100,000, and this is something that Kelly and I have been wanting to work at for this year. So I do hope that council will give consideration to go ahead with this. And this is in conjunction with our asset management plan. We had wanted to undertake a project whereby we complete the sewer camera work for all of Wingham. So when you're working on your asset management plan, what is under the streets is really what drives which streets that you do. So what we would like to do in conjunction with the roads needs study that Kelly was talking to you about is undertake a project where we do this camera work and get all of it on video and get the conditions all rated, and then use that information in conjunction with the roads needs study to give you a much better long-term planning aspect onto it. As I said, you can't just take the roads piece and use that as your asset management plan. There's many more things that factor into that. So we've talked to a lot of engineers, and I think everyone has agreed that we're on the right path with that. In addition to that, what we've done is through David and his department, as you know, through emergency planning, the wards are all divided up with critical areas, critical buildings, those types of things. So there'd be the hospitals, the schools, all of those. So those are all rated as well. So we're working that into the asset management plan, that those blocks that have those facilities and institutions on them also receive a higher rating for risk and that type of thing. So we're working on gathering a lot of information that we'll be putting through our asset management plan this year. And it's quite exciting because it's definitely information that we'll all use. All departments will be using that information. And so we're hoping that we can investigate this a little bit more this year, and certainly hope that we can proceed with that, because I think it's going to be very valuable information on the go forward. So one of the things as well that Dawn had mentioned, and I think Kelly had mentioned as well, is so the sewer and water plants, we've really struggled with hydro costs out there. So we really want to do some more work on hydro out there as well. So that's one of the operating parts.
Trevor?
Yeah, so let me understand, Donna, so with that sewer canal work and the road needs study, so at the end of the day, is this gonna provide our asset management plan? Is this gonna provide council and staff like a 5-year plan of where, like, obviously when we're doing a road, we wanna make sure we're doing the sanitary sewers at the same time. We don't wanna pave a road and then 2 years later dig it up.
Exactly.
So is that coming down the
That's the
pipe as a
goals,
5-year capital,
Well, more than 5
or
years.
something, like,
Yes.
cause not what we get today. Like we get the program, the, like, for example, Patrick Street, we got that, but I don't know from a ratepayer standpoint, I get probably a call a week or a call a month asking, well, where's my road in the priority list? And I'm like, I can't tell you that, because I don't know what it is. So if we as council had that plan, you know, it's not gonna necessarily mean it's gonna happen, but again, at least we can let ratepayers know that, you know, it's not, the road isn't off the chart, it's somewhere in the plan.
Right.
Yeah, the goal as we go forward is going to be having a multi-year capital plan for every piece of infrastructure that we own. And by doing that, you are going to see what your infrastructure deficit is.
Right.
And I think right now, it's very difficult for council to make informed decisions about what your priorities are when you don't have that plan in place. We know that our capital dollars are shrinking, our provincial funding is shrinking, and we have to make the most of the dollars that are available to us. And as council, you have to understand what your top priorities are. So I think this has to be one of our top priorities as a staff, to put this information in front of you so you're making the best use of the capital dollars that are available to you. And again, looking at what should our annual reserve transfers be for each of these pieces of infrastructure to be able to sustain them over the long term.
Personally, I think if we got that camera work done on the sewers, not just 5-year, but 10, 15, 20-year information would come out of that study, and that it would really assist in being able to do an educated estimate of when we have to do certain things. Bill?
Yeah, just wanted to ask Donna a quick question. 100,000 for that camera work, that's an outside contract?
Yeah.
So that's not our internal staff?
I would like to note that a lot of these numbers that are being brought forward in the water and wastewater budget were submitted by the previous chief operator before he left. So this is sort of a status quo budget. As you know, we are looking at our operations. And so I think we're going to have to do a lot of work in the future on revising and amending this budget. I have met with project engineers over the last week to review the status of some of the capital projects. And so I would like to bring forward detailed reports to council on the status of those projects and what they would entail for next year. So I really am not prepared to delve into a lot of discussion at this point. As we know, we're in transition and we've got a lot of work to do there. But I think council needs some more information in front of them with respect to the capital projects, and we just need a little bit more time to put that together.
Okay, so we'll move on then to the water, and the same thing as Sharon was saying, this is basically a status quo budget for there. I do want to touch on the capital that's in here and whether it stays or goes. Some of it has to stay, but the rest of it may be up for subjective review. So again, Packard Street was part of this project. There's about $50,000 which will have to stay for the Westmoreland Mill Street project in Blythe. There was a hydraulic pump that in discussions with the staff, they were looking for this hydraulic pump at a cost of about $12,500. Sharon has received information from the engineers on the building portion of the Blythe well. So that has now been divided into two pieces. And as you know, when Dawn had originally submitted that OCIF application for that project, the intention was to use part of the arena building to be able to house the equipment. As they went down that road, they found that that was not possible. And so therefore they switched gears and had to talk to council about discussing a separate standalone building. So I'm not sure where those estimates are at this point, Sharon, but you will be getting those as part of your whole gathering.
That's part of the discussion we had last week, and I'll bring a report forward.
Great to council. But the well portion itself is still underway, and as I was mentioning, it's crucial that that project stay on track, because we have to have that whole thing up and running by the end of 2016. So the application to the MOE went in on December 14th, I believe, and we haven't heard anything at this time. Our engineer is away until I think February the 12th. So once he returns, I think Sharon will be meeting with him to find out if they've done any follow-up with the ministry on the status of that application. And again, it's crucial that we get those tenders awarded by March 31st. So in order to stay online. So Sharon will be bringing some of that back to you in the next rounds of the budget for sure. Okay, so we're not going to spend a lot more time on that, as I said, because of all the change that's going on there. So we can move back now to finish the final part of our discussions tonight, which will bring Kathy back and have her finish up her part. So Kathy, I have you starting with building here.
So, not much change from last year. Building is department, as far as revenue, it's very hard to predict because we never know what construction or what projects is going to take place throughout the municipality throughout the year. We did have a little bit better year last year than we thought, but we're just going to budget approximately the same as we have other years. The expenditure side, slightly, we've a little bit of decrease there from other years. We had a substantial savings, you'll notice, in office supplies this year. So we are going to decrease that budget quite a bit, but what we did do is we are going to be asking council when Donna brings forward the money to be put into reserves, the surplus out of that office supply budget, and we're hoping that this year with that to buy a software program that contains the building code so that it doesn't have to be looked up on paper anymore, so that it can be done that way. Other than that, not a lot of changes. We don't get the funding this year from source water as revenue, and everything else pretty much stays exactly the same, with maybe a slight decrease in the operating. Any questions about the chief building official budget? If not, moving on to property standards, again, very little change from last year, and just a very slight increase to a couple of the costs for property standards, but pretty much status quo for that budget. Anybody have any questions about property standards? Okay, animal control. This is one of the very, well, we have a few, but this is one of the very few budgets that we actually show revenue. So we have the sale of license, fines, and livestock claims. If we happen to have a livestock claim go into the Ministry of Ag and Food, they pay us back for it. Of course, we have to pay that out, but they pay us back for it. And one thing that we have over the years saved a lot of money from animal control is from having a regular animal control officer that did regular patrols to now that in the last few years that we have someone that comes as we need them. So it's a call-in basis. We pay for them as they are called, and they invoice us. So it seems to be working. What we do though for our licenses for dog tags is we do that under Keystone, and we invoice that at the beginning of every year. So everyone that's in our system, we have a fairly good database, and everyone that's had a dog tag gets billed for a dog tag, and then they have to pay for it and come in and pick up their tag. The reason we do have that good database is that a few years ago, we did pay the services of a dog counter to go around door to door in the whole municipality. And not only does that catch people with new dogs, it catches those who don't longer have dogs, and it helps develop our database. We didn't put money in the budget this year, but I think that's something that maybe next year we should consider, is that we will go out and do the whole municipality again, so that we are continuing to maintain and improve our database of mailing for dog licenses.
Trevor,
How long ago, Kathy, was that done?
4 years?
I think so. It's not something that it's easy to find someone that wants to do that.
No.
But we have tried, and because dog tags are due February 2nd, it's also a job that has to be done in the winter time. So, but
Yep.
we have had people do it, and it is worthwhile.
Miranda?
What are livestock claims?
That is livestock that's killed by coyotes. So we have a livestock evaluator who is appointed under our officials bylaw, statutory officials bylaw, and if we get a claim, particularly it's usually sheep or a young calf, and if it can be proven that it is a coyote, then we're responsible for paying that farmer for his losses, and then we can send that claim into the Ministry of Ag and Food, and they pay us back. So it kind of offsets each other. Okay, so then my last budget is,
Kathy, just,
sorry.
please, Bill?
And I appreciate this, but I'm actually going to contradict that the lack of an animal control officer, I don't think has succeeded very well. And we have gone to a situation where recently we've had several incidences of raccoons that nobody knew how to control. It used to be handled by the animal control officer. We've had OPP officers discharging weapons in the village of Blythe to shoot and kill raccoons, which is unacceptable. We ended up that we have had a raccoon on the main street. Recently, an OPP officer arrived on the scene and stated that it was too bad he couldn't shoot it because he would break the window. No concern about the fact he might have got a bullet ricocheting around the main street. But at one time, when Mr. Tripp was our animal control officer, we had one phone call that was simply made to him. He came, he took care of the issue, and that was it. Dog licensing has become a problem. I had several complaints from people that they have to come to William to get their dog tests. And I've asked several years ago if we could correct this by having a license available in Blythe so that people that live there can just go and pick up their licenses there. I think that we really have to re-examine it, and hiring a dog counter, not necessarily. I had someone complain to me the other day that they received a bill again for a dog who is dead. And that they had notified the office prior to, the dog was deceased, and yet they've been billed again. So that has to be taken a careful look at it. And I'm sorry, I just don't think it's working. I really think we should look at putting in an animal control officer for skunks, raccoons, and other wild animals, because we're getting more of them.
But I'll take a stab at it. But under statute, the provincial rules, dogs are the only animal that we control, basically under provincial statute. If we're going to look at coons, skunks, or cats, that is something that we will have to discuss as a council and decide whether we are going to step into an area that we don't have any provincial backing under statute. Kathy?
In the past, Bill, we did not pay Bob Trick to do wildlife control for us. The only time that when we had Bob Trick on contract that he disposed of wildlife is if we had a rabid animal, then we would pay Bob. He did not come into the municipality and control skunks and coons and on behalf of the municipality, nor did we pay him to do so. He would come into the municipality if you called him on a person-to-person basis. If you had a nuisance raccoon or something on your property, he would come and live trap and take that away. But the cost of that was borne by the property owner, not by the municipality. So we never did pay Bob to look after wildlife for us. The animal control officer that we are using now on a call-in basis will do exactly the same. If we have an animal that's rabid or sick, that is a threat, then yes, he will come in. But just for nuisance complaints, he does come in. He will do exactly the same for a property owner, but those costs are borne by the property owner. We do not look after wildlife, and never have.
Actually, I'm going to disagree. He told the property owner that he would not come, regardless of who paid for it, to come and take care of the raccoon.
No, he will not come into North Huron anymore since we canceled our contract. That's a personal decision of Mr. Trick's.
No, I'm not talking about Bob Trick. I'm talking about our current dog catcher, who told the individual that he would not come and take care of a raccoon and remove it. And it had nothing, he just wouldn't do it, period. He didn't care about being billed. So, I mean, that to me is unacceptable.
I have referred him, and I know of other places that he
And
has.
I know you
set up
referred
traps.
them to, that you referred the
But
person to call
again,
and talk to him, and he didn't do it.
it's not really our mandate to look after wildlife. So.
No, and quite frankly, I know Bob Trick removed animals and people were not billed for it. And some of that, and there were no billings. My concern is when we start calling OPP officers, which people do, and start discharging weapons, that's a dangerous situation. And that's happened. And not just once. Once I know for sure, but I've heard it's happened before. And to have an officer show up and say that he wishes he could shoot the thing. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Regardless of who pays for it, we need to have a proper animal control officer who will take care of those situations. If they want to build the property owner, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that, but we need to have somebody who is a point of contact. I'm not trying to control raccoons or skunks. And what I'm saying is we need somebody to take care of this situation. We're not going to license skunks and raccoons. That's
What I'm saying
legislation
is that we may have to have that discussion. This is a budget meeting.
I know, but I'm saying that that's something that I want to see that we look at and then we include in the budget for the subcommittee.
The last, budget that, I want to bring to your attention is the museum budget. Okay, so my responsibility for the museum is only the program. The facility itself, of course, falls under, Pat's budget. We have, very small revenue over there. Get some donations every year, admissions, and we do have, some rentals of the, basement and the meeting room, so very slight, very small revenue over there. And the same as expenditures as far as the program. We do hire a summer student, that works from May to usually the end of August every year. And most of the time, we are successful in offsetting the cost of that student. By a grant program, I apply for a grant program and usually am successful in getting that every year. And the rest of the expenditures pretty much are status quo. Just money that we use to advertise the programs and to supply some of those programs that our summer student may develop for this summer. So, does anybody have any questions? Like I said, the building expense part, how will be addressing that?
So the only question I have, Kathy, is the Friends of the Museum have come to council and talked about some of their initiatives.
Right.
I would like an update on where those initiatives, like where are they at with those initiatives? Are they kind of stopped? Are they going forward? There was some initiatives there that talked about additional revenue potential possibilities, and I guess my question is where are they, or is there any update on those initiatives?
The Friends of the Museum are scheduled for the February 16th agenda.
Okay.
To bring their year-end report to you and report on their activities for last year and what they're hoping to do for 2016. They're a very active little fundraising group. We do control their funds, like it does go into municipal.
Yep.
We do control it, but we also let them, they make it and we let them spend it as well. Like they buy things for the museum, they've bought display cases and different things like that. So yeah, they have their barbecues and different things. So they're a very active little group, but they kind of have their own little mandate.
Yep.
And they will be reporting on that.
Brock?
They put an awful lot of hours into that work. It's very, very valuable. And I think it's important that we show our appreciation for them. Sometimes they feel left out.
Yes. And again, they have a number of things that they plan throughout the year. They have a tea in, is it May? Did they have their tea? I can't remember. And they have their things. If you come to their tea in May, you can see that Kathy actually can bake. Only one thing.
Okay, is there any questions for Kathy then? So I will move to our last one for this evening, and that's page 14, and that's our police budget. So Tim is here to answer questions, and Trevor is here as the chair of the police board. So the budget was adopted at the board level, and it's included in the council budget as well. And so just one thing to bring to your attention, of course, we've been talking about the increase in OPP costing, which applies to Blythe and East Wallinosh Ward. So that is going up to $288,059 this year. So that gets area rated back to Blythe and East Wallinosh, which will contribute again to the increase in those two wards on their tax rates. I'll just mention that also the board approved the purchase of a new cruiser at $39,000, but Tim had $23,000 in reserve. So it's not the whole cost of that. That is new money for the taxpayers. So not sure if either of you gentlemen would like to make any other comments on this budget.
Just
With regard to that purchase that I'm looking at doing for a cruiser, it will not come to 39,000. That's just what was budgeted. Also, we're looking at getting a used vehicle to try and save some money. That looks like it might be falling through, unfortunately. But I also received a check from the Ontario government this week in the amount of $8,000 that's not in our budget. That is going, well, it should be going towards that. We had discussed it at the board level. So we have that check for 8,000 to add to it.
Okay, Trevor, did you want to say anything else about it?
I don't really have anything other than what the chief has said. There's nothing like operationally. It's basically been status quo from the officers, and based on the officers, they have a contract for 2 more years. That's really in this budget based on that, and really from the operations standpoint, it's not really changed. There's really nothing there. We're not from an OPP. What I would say is the same thing that we've talked about before, is that there has been a request for costing sent to the ministry, and when we're on their docket, I'm sure we'll get some response. But right now, we have not had any response.
Sure.
We actually have, but we'll be reporting that at the next meeting, so.
Police Service Board hasn't received.
Yeah,
it.
we've just received contact,
Okay.
so I'll be reporting back.
Okay.
James,
Just to keep Chief Poole on his toes, you still having lots of overtime? Is there any way you can cut overtime down?
If you can convince people to plead not guilty, the vast majority of our overtime is court. To go to Godrich, for example, I was there for approximately 7 hours today. So I had to call an officer in because I was going to be the only one working. So that officer worked for 7 hours of overtime today to cover the shift. So if people plead not guilty, yeah, we can cut back or plead guilty, sorry. We can cut back our overtime, but it's mostly traffic offenses too. It's not anything criminal that's causing that for us. It's the traffic courts.
So, what I will say to you, Jim, is the Police Service Board has weighed this conversation about, do you hire another officer to do it, to offset the overtime? And it's based on that, it's not financially feasible to do such a thing, based on the conversation that, we get told every so often, why do we have 7 officers now? So it really isn't one of those things where the Police Service Board thinks that it's justifiable to change the structure of how we mandate the service.
Okay, so are there any further questions for either of those gentlemen? If not, then, so we have covered 17 out of our 49 departments this evening, which is great, and we're right on time. We were planning on ending right around 9 o'clock. So I just, again, wanted to go over with you that the next meeting on Wednesday night, our Director of Recreation and Facilities will be using that whole 2-hour time slot. She will be talking about all the departments that she looks after, her capital 3-year plan, and she'll be also bringing forward some information on the airport feasibility study and her operating budget review. So I've outlined, and then the next budget will be, the final budget meeting will be February the 10th to deal with the last departments there. And then hopefully there's time at that meeting to start having some discussions on moving things in and out of the budget and next steps after that. So anyway, we have a full schedule for the next couple of weeks. And then also, if you have any questions or anything that you've seen in the budget that you'd like further information on, please send me a note before Wednesday night's meeting then. Or again, ask me at Wednesday night.
if I just may.
Yes,
So you do have your first draft here, which is 12.83%, and as you know, that is not where we know we want to end up. But we usually, pare things down, and when it gets to a stage where we feel, we could be looking at service levels or deferral of certain capital projects, we feel that is a political decision rather than a staff decision. So that's why we come into you at that number. So we know you're going to want to pare things down to something that council feels is acceptable. And if we could leave you thinking among yourselves what you feel is an acceptable target that you could live with for this year, that is some discussion that we will need to be having. So we know what our targets are as we make our recommendations to you.
okay, that need a resolution that there being no further business before the Township of North Huron Council. The public meeting is hereby adjourned. Do I have a motion? Swadden and Callahan, all in favor? Carried.
So we'll see you for round 2.